Hello everyone, and welcome to the first video on WordPress plugin development. Today we're going to be talking about how to make a plugin for WordPress. This is the first video in a series of videos that will go through the process of making a plugin step by step. The way that I'm going to present this series is to clearly state the outcomes that I hope to achieve at the beginning of each video, and then ask some concept checking questions at the end of the video. Hopefully this will give you a greater amount of information at the beginning to decide whether there is anything for you in the video. If the information is too basic or complex, you can move on to the next video in the series or move back to a previous one. Additionally, I hope that the use of the theory behind the concepts, the concept checking questions, the examples, and the live modeling that I'll use in the video will help consolidate the information that we have covered. So let's get started. Today's big aim is to create a simple plugin that you can add to your WordPress website. By the end of the video, we should be able to do a number of things, including running a WordPress website locally from our computer, being able to explain the purpose of the main folders in the WordPress file structure, being able to create a plugin so it appears on your new website, and being able to add some securities to start protecting the plugins you have made. Additionally, there is a challenge outcome of being able to open some of the other plugins that are available and to try and describe the plugin code. You can do this in either the comments below, to friends, or even in your own head. The idea is to start getting familiar with looking at other people's code as a good method of learning, and just getting familiar with the code in general. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is trying to get WordPress stored locally on our computer. Now, I think there are a number of benefits to do this. First of all, there are no fees to host the website, so it's totally free. No one can access your work until you're ready to upload it online, and that's very easy. And it allows us to see the file structure of WordPress quite easily. To get WordPress locally on your computer, there's two simple steps that we need to do. The first step is to download a local platform for WordPress. So I'm choosing Bitnami, but there are many other platforms that you could use. But for this video, we're going to just choose Bitnami. And the second step is just to install it. So it's just a one-click installation process. Okay, so that's it, two simple steps. So it is that easy, and now we're going to try and do that. Okay, so here we are at the Bitnami website. I got here by just searching Bitnami and then WordPress, and this got me to this website. What I would like to do is I would like to try and install this on my computer. So I'm going to be clicking on this button, and then it gives me different options depending on my operating system. So I'm going to be installing the Windows one. So I click this. Again, there's many options of signing in, but I don't want to sign in. I just want to take the download. So I'll click this, and that's it. That'll start the downloading process, and I can just save it. Okay, so while it's downloading, we can look at what the steps we have to do to install it once it's downloaded. So we've done the first step, which is we will be doing the first step, which is run the downloaded file. The second step there is just kind of click through the setup options. The kind of options that you'll have to decide. Simple ones like what language do you want it in, and where do you want it to store on your local computer. The third step is to remember your account details, so that's quite important. So you'll get to a setup process like this, and it's important that you remember your password, because if you do not, it'll make it very difficult for you to log into your admin section of the web page. And that's it. All you need to do is click through the rest of the setup, and it will install it onto your computer. Okay, so I've run the downloaded file now. As you can see, the first option is just selecting the language that we'll be using. I will be using English. And then it takes you through a setup wizard. So you can just click next. You can select which kind of components you want in your installation. So I'm going to pick both of them. And then it it asks where you want to install it. Now I have already installed this, so I can't use the default one, but you are able just to press next here. And there you go, it asks you what kind of admin details you want. So you can put your real name and then create a password and login details. So do remember that you have to remember this because you will need it to log on. All you need to do is press next. Again, I have already set up one, so I don't want to install another copy. So I'm going to stop it there, but you can just keep pressing next and it will do a installation onto your computer. And that is it. Okay, when installation has been completed, it will take you to this address. So this is where our local hosting website will be placed. So if you want to go on it, you have to remember this location. So if we click on Access WordPress, it will take us to our website. So this is our WordPress website. If we log in, we will have to remember our password. And it will take us to the dashboard where we can add or see themes and plugins that we'll be using. And that should be it for the installation. Okay, so while the installation is happening, I thought it would be a good idea to maybe explain some of the purposes of the main folders and files that will be created during the installation. Now, the way that WordPress works is that there is a front end and a back end that is created without any help from you. So when you install it, there will be a number of files that WordPress will use to create the front and back end of WordPress. And these files are in the include and admin. So we don't really want to touch these files. We may look into them to explore a little bit about WordPress, but we want to focus on the content. So this is where we put our own code and plugins and themes. And what will happen is these files, the include and the admin, will use our content and put it onto our WordPress plugin. Another important tip that we can use for developing is this WP config. So in there is a debugging option that we can change to true and false. And this means that if we change it to true, when we are working on it and there's an error, it will show these errors, and this will help us fix problems. Okay, so let's have a look at the file structure. So if we go to the Bitnami folder, which is where it has been installed, and we click on it, there are a number of different folders. This is just for Bitnami. We want to look at apps and then go into WordPress and htdocs, and then this is the file that we were looking at before. So if we go into that config file and we edit it, I'm going to use Notepad++, and we go down. Okay, so we've got this debug set for false. So now if we set this for true and save it, this means that as we're developing, if we encounter an error, it will display a notice during the development. So it also talks about it up here. So it's recommended when developing plugins and themes. So it is a useful little piece of or useful method in the development. So if we go back and we look at the content page, again, this is where we're going to be spending most of our times. So we have plugins, themes, and uploads. So we're going to be working on plugins, and so this is the folder that we'll be using. If you're going to develop themes, this is the folder that you'll be using. So for us, these are the plugins that I've made or that I've downloaded so far. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit better about the file structure and WordPress in general, let's talk about the 3 steps that we need to do to create a new plugin. So step 1 is to create a new folder in the plugin. So remember that file structure we talked about? Well, all we need to do is create a folder in that with the name of our plugin. Number 2, we need to create a new PHP file, and we need to make sure it has the same name as the folder. And then we just need to add some basic information to that PHP file. So we're going to be looking a little bit about that when we make it. And that's it. Those 3 steps means that you have created your first plugin and it will appear in the WordPress website. We're going to be looking at a number of different things when we create this. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at is the difference between the index PHP and the main file PHP, and we're going to be explaining the difference. We're going to be looking at the package, and we'll be looking at examples of other plugins. So we're going to be explaining what this means. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about licensing. So let's look at a plugin that we already have. So I think it's a good idea to look at some of the other existing functions and see their code before we start trying to create our own. So if we go into the plugin folder, we have a list of plugins that are available on our WordPress. Let's look at the first one. So if we look at there is a number of different files. Now, the files that we want to focus on are the index file and the main file. So if you look here, the main file has the same name as the folder. Yeah, so that's how we know it's the main file. We don't need to pay much attention to the others yet. For now, we just want to focus on these 2 files. So have a look at the index file. So if we look at the index file, there's not much information there. We only have this silence and is golden phrase, and it's commented out. So this is just to stop direct access of our plugin. So we have this index to make so that users can't directly access our plugin, and so they must go through the WordPress process to get to our plugin. So it adds an additional security measure. Now you can just kind of copy paste this into your folder if you wish. You may not need the extra security when developing, but I think it's always useful to start getting into these good habits, and it just takes a copy and paste, and that's it. So let's look at the main folder then. So if we look at the main folder, we've got this package. What this means is that it's just saying that everything in this file, all the functions or the includes, belong to this plugin. So that's all that is saying. Okay, so here, this is where it gives us our basic information that we need to add to our file. That's all the information that we need to add to put our plugin onto the website. So we've got the name of it, we've got the URL, we've got the descriptions. Now, if we go to the our main website here, if we look here, we've got the description here, and we go back to the file. Here, it's the same thing. So this information will be added to this here. So we've got plugin name, URL, description, the version that we want, the author that we want, so it tells us there, the website address of that author, so if you click here, where will that take you? And then the last thing here is just the licensing here. So it's just telling us that if we want to redistribute this file, these are the conditions that it has to be done under. And I think it's a good idea to include this in all the include licensing in your development, even if you're practicing it, because when you do start distributing it, you need to put some kind of a licensing in. So if you want, you can just kind of copy paste some of this in, or you can go onto a website to get it, or you can just try and find out and remember it yourself. These are the different options that you can do, but this is all the information that you just need to include to put your plugin to your website. So before I do a live modeling of creating a new plugin, I would like you to see if you can, from the theory and from the examples of the other plugins, see if you can make your own plugin. So you can copy some of the licensing, copy some of the file structure of the existing plugins, but try and make it yourself before I do it. So if you can just pause that now, and then do your best to try and create your own plugin before we work through it together. Okay, so hopefully you've tried it yourself, and now let's try and walk through it together. So to create the first plugin, we need to go to the right folder, which is the plugins folder, and then we need to create our plugin folder that we want to make. So let's go new and click on folder. The folder or the plugin that I'm going to make, I'm just going to call it lesson 1. You can change it to anything you want, and let's have a look. There should be nothing in there now, so we need to put 2 files in there, that index file and that main PHP file. I think the way that I am going to do it is I'm just going to take the files from another plugin just to give me that structure and just place it in there. So if we look at the index file, we've got this file that will help us protect our plugin from direct access, so we don't need to change anything here. But we need to change quite a few things from this main PHP file. So the first thing that we need to change is to change the name so it matches up. So we change the name to lesson 1. So now it matches up to the folder name, and let's open that. So here we have this app package. This is saying that all the functions and all the information belongs to this plugin. So we want to change that to our plugin. We want to change the name here. So if we look here and we go back to our main website, the plugin name matches the name here. So we want to change this name. So let's call it lesson 1 simple plugin. Okay, so that will be the new name of our plugin. We have a URL, a URI there. We're going to change that, and I don't think we're going to put anything there. If we got the description, this matches up with this, so we can get rid of that and just say my first plugin. Our version, so let's just put that as 0.1, so it's the first one. So again, it matches up here. We've got the author, so I'm going to change that to my name. Again, that will match up to there. The author's URI, let's get rid of that. And then that's the licensing that we're going to be using. I'm going to get rid of this text domain, so we can just get rid of that. So that is the basic information that we will have to create our plugin. This is the licensing here, so let's just put copyright to the current date maybe, which is 2009, and we can get rid of the authors. Okay, so we have our basic information and we have our licensing. So we can remove everything else and we can save it. Now, that is the 3 steps that we needed to do to create our plugin. So let's look if our plugin has been uploaded to our website. So if we refresh our plugin page, just to make sure, and we go down, There we go. There is our first plugin. So we've got our name, plugin name, lesson 1 simple plugin. We have the description, we have the version, and we have the author. We don't have any links because we didn't put any URIs in, but it's located on our website. So I think we have accomplished our object 3. If we activate it, it will be activated, but nothing will happen because we haven't added any functions yet. That will come later on. But we have got our first plugin onto our WordPress website. So now that we've created the plugin, we can add some security PHP code to make sure that we add further security. So we already know that we have done something to make sure people don't directly access our plugin. And we've done that by adding that index.php file. So users aren't allowed to directly access it. But there's also some code that we can add to our plugin to make sure. Now I'm going to talk to you about 3 of them because there are many different ways of doing this. So the first one is this function. So we're saying if this add action does not exist. So this means not. So if this action here, if this function add action does not exist, then we say, hey there, I'm just a plugin, not much I can do when called directly. And then we exit our plugin. So if this does not exist, we do an error message and we close the plugin. There's some other ones again. So we're saying if, and this means not, and then this defined checks whether something has been defined or created, and this is the absolute path of the WordPress directory. It's the same here. When WordPress is initialized, when it starts up, it will define and create a bunch of back-end and front-end things. And so if you directly access your plugin without WordPress properly initializing and without you or the user accessing your plugin in the correct manner, what will happen is it will die. And again, this die here means close, and this will just produce an error message of -1. So you can decide whether you want to add an error message or just put die. But this exit or die does very similar things. It just closes down the plugin. You can also get rid of the if by using an or. So it's the same thing here. So you were saying if the absolute path of the directory has been defined, don't worry. But if it hasn't, you will close the plugin and you will have this error message. So all of them does very similar things. If they're called direct, it will stop the plugin, and this adds extra security. So there are many ways that you can do this or remember this. You can look at existing plugin folders and just kind of choose one that you have on default and just kind of put it into your code, or you can remember one of your favorites. So maybe the last one here is easier to remember because it's just one line of code. So the concept checking questions. So do you know which file will allow you to change the debugging options for your WordPress website? Which folder will you be opening to add additional plugins to your WordPress website? How many files do we need to create to add extra security to our plugin? And there are 3 different methods to increase security. Can you describe 2 of them? So stop the video now and see how many you can guess right. Okay, so which file will allow you to change the debugging options? That is the wp-config PHP file. So if you open that and go down and set that to true, it allows you to see the error messages for the developer. Which folder will you be using to add plugins? That would be the WP content and the plugin folder. So you need to remember that is the folders that you need to be using. How many files should we be creating to create a basic plugin? Well, we should be using 2. One of them should be the main file, and it should be the name of the folder, and the second one should be the index.php, which stops direct access. There are 3 PHP methods to add security. Can you remember 2 of them? Well, we have the if the add action doesn't exist, so just remember if it does not exist, then we die, or we can say exit. Defined the absolute path or die, or if this is not defined, exit. So we have 3 different ones. We have one, if this function doesn't exist. We have one which is defined or die, and we have one that says not defined. So hopefully you can remember, or you did remember, at least 2 of them. So thank you, that's the end of the video. Hopefully we did create a simple plugin with today, and we did that by making sure that WordPress is stored locally, by understanding the WordPress file structure, by using security code to make sure our plugin is a little bit more secure. If you have any feedback, would you like more concept checking questions or less? Did you find them useful? Did you find exploring the other plugin codes useful? Did you think we accomplished all of our objectives in the video? Is there too much information or too little? And is there any way I can improve these videos? So if you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's try and add the security code to our plugin. For this, we need to go back to our main file, which is the lesson1.php, and open it up. And then underneath the licensing, we can choose which type of code that we want to use. So remember, it is the not function exists, or the not defined, or we can say defined something or die. So do remember that, because that will be on the test at the end. You have to try and remember one of them. So let's just say defined, and let's say the absolute path, so ABS path, or die, and just say do not access directly. Again, you can use any of your own messages and then just the semicolon, which is what we need for the PHP as for each of the end commands. So we save that, and that really should not affect our plugin. So let's have a look to make sure that our plugin is still working. Okay, so let's go back to our WordPress website and just make sure that there are no errors. So let's refresh it. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to upload, so let's try it one more time. And we have an error. Now, if we remembered before, we have added the debugging option in that config file. So because we've changed that debugging to true, we get this error message. So it tells us where the problem is. If you didn't have that set to true, you would just get this one, and this is a little bit less helpful. So because we know that because we have set that to true, we know that there's a problem on line 34. Can anyone see the problem? Yes, I am missing a bracket here. So if we add the bracket here and close it up, and we just save it, that should work. So that, again, that doesn't add any extra functionality to our plugin, because we need extra code for that, but it does add some additional security to stop direct access. So I think we have accomplished our 4 aims or objectives today. So before we end, I've got a few questions to ask you to see if you can remember the things that we have covered.